Okay, it's 6 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our town hall meeting for Alameda's Underground Utility District program. I'm Gary Spenick, the project manager for Alameda Municipal Power, and I'm the project manager for the Underground Utility District program. We are recording this evening and plan to make it available on AMP's webpage. Tonight's meeting is to share information on the city's undergrounding program and to begin collecting feedback on the next proposed underground utility districts. I have about a 15-minute presentation, after which I will answer your questions and collect any feedback. First, I'll give you a short background of undergrounding in Alameda. I will give you an overview of the undergrounding process, tell you where we are in that process, and describe our next steps. During the presentation, you can submit questions in the chat and I will try to address them at the end. I will also try allowing you to unmute your microphone at the end so that you can ask questions without having to type them. If I'm unable to get to a question or to provide an answer, I will post a response on AMP's webpage. If you're not familiar with Microsoft Teams, here's how you submit a question. So the arrow points to 1, you click on the conversation icon, and then you type your question where the arrow number 2 shows, and then you hit the send icon, which number 3 is pointing towards. Alameda's undergrounding program began in 1984 as an effort to beautify the city. The undergrounding program is accomplished by designating underground utility districts, or UUDs, through a city ordinance. The ordinance requires that all overhead utility facilities within the district must be converted to underground. The program is funded through a 2% component of AMP's electric revenue paid into the Underground Utility District Fund. AMP is the lead city agency. 25 UUDs have been completed in Alameda since 1984. Approximately 50% of Alameda is already underground, but we still have about 93 miles of overhead. The original undergrounding program was halted in 2012, and AMP staff was tasked with redesigning the process. A revised underground utility district policy was approved by City Council in March of 2015. The major changes in the revised program include that the criteria for selecting and prioritizing the districts was defined. To increase public participation, districts are now nominated by a district nomination board, which includes 1 member from Public Works and up to 4 members from the general public. And the cost of the service laterals and conversion cost are no longer passed on to the property owner, except in the rare case where the length of the service lateral exceeds 100 feet. Here's an overview of the UUD program. In step 1, the district nomination board who nominates is the district nomination board who nominates areas to be undergrounded. Step 2 is the technical advisory committee who reviews and refines the district nomination board's recommendations. In step 3, the technical advisory committee presents their proposed districts to the public via a town hall meeting. Step 4, customers within the proposed districts are surveyed. And in step 5, the Public Utilities Board recommends to the City Council formation of new underground utility districts. UUDs must be approved by the City Council through a city ordinance. Once approved, project designs are completed and construction can begin. Construction of an underground district occurs in multiple steps. First, the main trench, substructure, and service lateral conduits are built by a construction contractor who will also install and convert the streetlights. After the substructure is in place, each utility will install their wires, cables, and other equipment and will begin to convert customer service connections from overhead to underground. When all utilities, electric, cable, and phone, have completed their conversions, the utility poles can be removed. We have completed one cycle of the 5 steps of the UUD program that I showed earlier. These are the 7 areas that were nominated by the district nomination board. And I numbered them on there. The first one is the Otis Drive from High Street to Broadway. Number 2 was Webster Street crossings. Number 3, Broadway from Buena Vista to Clement. Number 4, Broadway from La Jolla to Encinal. Number 5, Central Avenue from 8th Street to Webster. Number 6, Fernside, Encinal to High Street. And number 7, Park Street, San Jose to Otis. The Technical Advisory Committee combined areas 1 and 2 together and sent the proposed Otis Broadway underground utility district to City Council recommending approval. I'm sorry, that was 1 and 4, not 1 and 2. The City Council approved the Otis Broadway Underground Utility District, UUD number 38, in February of 2019. The district runs along Otis Drive from High Street to Broadway and along Broadway from La Jolla to Encinal Avenue. It's about 1.2 miles long and impacts 205 parcels. The joint trench participants include Alameda Power, AT&T, Comcast, and the city. The award of a construction contract for UUD 38 is pending approval of a Caltrans permit. Because the route is part of State Route 61, AMP must obtain a Caltrans permit before construction can be done. We learned that we were missing some required design drawings in our permit application and are preparing those now. Once construction begins, we estimate it will take 10 to 12 months to install the underground substructure. After the construction is complete, each utility can begin to pull their cable and install equipment. Service cutover will likely occur in 2024, with the poles being removed in 2025. We are now ready to start the planning and designs for the next 2 underground utility districts. From the District Nominations Board's list, we are proposing to move forward with the Webster Street crossings, which is a combination of items 2 and 5, and Broadway from Buena Vista to Clement, which is item number 3. The Webster Crossings Districts combines the 2nd and 5th area recommended by the District Nomination Board. This area was previously proposed in 2018, but was not recommended to the City Council. On a side note, undergrounding the Webster Street crossings had been in the planning stage in 2012 when the original program was discontinued. The reason the district was not recommended to the City Council in 2018 is that there were some concerns expressed by residents within the district. We had sent a survey to 270 residents and owners asking if they supported the undergrounding project. While the response rate was fairly low, 42% of the 32 responses we did receive indicated that they were not in favor of the project. We would like to hear your feedback. Based on the feedback, we will review and may revise the proposed boundaries and equipment locations. And this will not be your last chance to provide input. We will conduct a new survey before seeking approval from the City Council. I've not yet identified a timeline for this effort. However, an outline of our next steps is that AMP will continue to collect feedback on the proposed districts. You can provide comments now or email them at any time to the displayed email address. We will review the feedback and begin working on preliminary designs. Before seeking approval of districts, we will send out a survey to those residents and owners within the district. Once approved, we'll prepare drawings and specifications for the construction. Design may take 12 to 18 months, with construction lasting 24 to 36 months. At this time, I'll accept any feedback and attempt to answer questions. Like I said, you can always submit questions or feedback via email by sending it to the address you see, and we will post updates on AMP's webpage. And I will note that I seem to have lost one of the slides that showed the other area, which is a small section of Broadway on Buena Vista. Somehow that got missed in my slide deck. Let me check and see if there are questions.
Here you have one question from guest. Do residents still have the option to pull resources to fund this work independent of this UUD process?
I'm not sure I understand the question. If you could rephrase that, or you can unmute and speak. So I understand. So there are different ways to underground your area. If you are not in a designated underground utility district, residents can decide, they can petition to have their street undergrounded. The issue is that those people requesting it end up paying all of the project cost, and undergrounding can be expensive. But if that's something you're interested in, there is a process for doing that. I would also, I did receive some emails today, and one question that has come up before asked about, okay, we're going to move the wires underground. What about the impact of sea level rise or climate change on the underground utility lines? And so the answer to that is that, I mean, as I pointed out, is that we're already about 50% underground in Alameda, and that the services that we design, I mean, we provide looped underground distribution services for redundancy. The cables that we use are manufactured for this particular use: direct buried in ducts, wet and dry, and for submarine applications. So they're designed to function in wet and submerged applications. And then another question I had by a few people is for service laterals. And so after the service lateral is converted from overhead to underground, the project will pay the cost to install that service lateral, but the property owners will own the service lateral itself. And so at this point, you can type questions into the chat, or go ahead and unmute yourself, and you can ask.
Yeah, hi. I've been asking questions around the given that it's been 40 years, you're not going to get to my block in my lifetime. I've got a pole out front. I'd love to take it down. Can I just pay to have one pole taken down with the city, or is there a minimum number of poles required? for a project to be feasible from the construction point of view.
If you're only undergrounding your service, and I guess you want to remove the pole. Is that
Correct.
the issue?
Yeah, and so I'm wondering if the whole block would have to come down, or if individual poles could just come down separately.
I think you would have to contact us to have a more detailed discussion of what you're proposing. And then, like I said, then 100% of those costs would end up transferring to you or your neighbors that participate.
I see. And word on the street years ago was that it was about 10,000 per house on a block to do the whole block. So maybe $100,000, $200,000 to do a whole block. Does that sound about right, or is that?
That sounds low. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Gary, you had a question on the chat. Is there a minimum number of poles for a given project to be feasible?
Okay, I think that was the question just asked. So everything would be a case by case, and if you're interested in, and like I said, this ends up being like a self-pay, you would need to contact us, and we could start looking at it. And then I see the question, who is responsible for future maintenance and connections from privately owned buildings? Okay, so the service lateral, like I said, will be owned by is owned by the property owner in Alameda. So any should that service lateral require maintenance in the future, that's going to be on the property owner. There's a question about, will permits be required for undergrounding, reconnection of power, installation of junction boxes on private property, etc. That will be done as part of the project. One of the differences in the old program is that the property owners would be responsible for contracting and paying for the installation of that service lateral, and then they would get reimbursed an amount for the electrical, but not the entire amount. Under the new program, the project will pay to install the service lateral. They'll restore any disturbed surfaces to the original condition as much as possible. And I did mention a caveat that there is a 100-foot limit on that. So in the rare case that the service lateral exceeds 100 feet, then there might be some cost sharing of that lateral. And once again, I encourage everybody, you don't have to have your questions now. Just email them to that undergrounding AMP email address, and we'll answer them. And like I said, I don't have the time frame for when we'll be seeking to approval of these districts, but I would like to collect feedback.
Gary, this is Kurt Libby. I was part of the neighborhood group that was advocating for the Broadway. I live on Broadway, and the Buena Vista to Clement area. I know under the old program, when they had to pay for the laterals, property owners did, we have a lot of rentals from Buena Vista down Broadway, and the absentee owners didn't want the expense, and they tried to scuttle the Broadway part of it. We got all the owners that together that were, there weren't many rentals, there wasn't any rentals, I guess, from Clement to Buena Vista, and all the owners got together and got that group approved years ago, and it had moved to the head of the line, and probably under the old program. But I'm glad you've changed the rules, or the city's changed the rules, and is going to pay for the laterals and the connections, because that scuttled it for people before.
Right, that was probably the major complaint, I think, in 2012 when they discontinued the old program, is that property owners had to come up with several $1,000s back then to get this work done.
And the people who live there are happy to do it, but there's so many rentals.
Right.
Those absentee owners aren't interested in more expenses.
Gary, you have a question. Is the 100 feet from the proposed Avenue junction box to the services as they exist today, or from the existing poles?
No, it's typically there's going to be a box in front of your house to the location of your panel. So that's the 100 feet. So that's why I said it's going to be rare. There probably are properties in Alameda that exceed 100 feet, but probably not many. And that rule applies because there are certain rules that govern how much the communications AT&T and Comcast have to pay, and that's pretty much it's the 100-foot length.
And next question, will the presentation slide deck be made available for download?
Yes, we could do that. And we'll put it on AMP's webpage. So if you don't find it right away, search for undergrounding on our webpage. And I see some typing going on, and I'll see what that is. And great, thanks, Andre. Andre posted the email address if you have any questions or feedback. So we're not treating commercial or residential properties any differently. And there's a question there that some commercial properties may exceed the 100 feet. And that, I mean, it's hard to say until we do a field survey of what each individual parcel, what the impact is. Okay, I thank you all for participating in this town hall. And like I said, I encourage feedbacks and comments. And we'll try to post an update on our webpage as we move along in this process.
There was one last question. Do you have a cost as it would apply to the property owners beyond the 100 feet?
I don't, but that would probably be the incremental cost beyond 100 feet of trenching in the conduit, which is going to be at whatever rate. And we should have a fairly good rate of construction because we're going to be contracting for one contractor to do all this work. So our rates should be pretty good. So I don't have any costing information at this point. All right. Well, thank you. And I'm sure I'll hear from some of you. Oh, somebody's typing.
Okay.
Okay. Good night.
Thank you for the presentation, Gary.
Absolutely.